So, dear Managing Director, Kristalina, dear Ministers, Governors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, again, a warm welcome after yesterday evening. Good morning to all of you, to the formal part of our conference. We had a beautiful evening yesterday, which I think served as a perfect introduction to what's going to happen today. This is the fourth time, as we established yesterday, that we are running this conference. We started in 2017, and Christine just sent me a message saying, I hope everything goes well and the godmother will be back in 2 years if possible, if invited. And we will have an anniversary in 2 years' time. I'm especially honored that once again I can welcome my co-host, Kristalina Georgieva. Thanks again for coming. You were with us 2 years ago, so probably we made a good impression if you're back. And I'm happy that Commissioner Valdis Dombrovskis is with us. He couldn't come last year. He was supposed to come. Good to have you here, and thank you for the inspiring speech yesterday evening. And I also welcome Teresa Czerwinska, Vice President of the European Investment Bank, whose continued support we deeply appreciate. We meet again at the time of, as it was said in the introduction, heightened uncertainty. Not only about the direction of global growth, but about very rules and norms that have governed international cooperation for decades. The key drivers of the global economy, openness and integration, now seem to be reversing. Trade and investment routes are shifting, and tariffs have now become a new buzzword. We are once again navigating choppy waters. If you remember 2 years ago, the title of the conference was Navigating the Choppy Waters. They have not become any calmer in the meantime. So the theme of this year's edition, Growth and Resilience in the CEC, in a more fragmented world, is unfortunately a reality. In fact, it echoes the discussions we've had across several years of this conference. Back in 2017, we discussed the challenge of economic convergence and how investment, productivity, and demographic trends could help CEC countries close the gap with the rest of Europe. Then in 2019, we tackled labor market pressures and demographic headwinds, threatening to stall the convergence. And in 2023-21, we skipped because of the COVID. Alfred, that's the missing conference. We explored how the region could foster resilience in the face of energy insecurity. There was a lot about energy last time, post-COVID supply chain shifts and frequent supply shocks. All of these themes, energy, labor markets, productivity, trade patterns, converge again today in the face of a new and more complex reality, a fragmented world. For the last 3 decades, the countries of Central, Eastern, and Southeastern Europe have advanced on a clear convergent path built on openness, foreign investment, trade, and rising productivity. As a result, millions of people saw significant improvements in their living standards since 1990 until today. It was a great success and a still great success story. But today, the world around us is changing fast. We are seeing growing economic fragmentation, rising protectionism, and intensified geopolitical competition. For countries of our region, whose growth models have relied heavily on integration into global and European production networks, this shift presents a real challenge. To better understand how to adapt to these challenges, we should look not only outward but also back. Back to this very city of Dubrovnik. Because long before modern supply chains and trade arrangements, the small city-state of Dubrovnik navigated a fragmented multipolar world, and it was very successful at doing it. The Republic of Dubrovnik, or Ragusa at that time, was nestled between 2 great powers, Venice to the west and the Ottomans to the east. It had neither great armies nor large territories, but it had strategy, diplomacy, and economic sophistication. Dubrovnik flourished not by trying to dominate, but by connecting. It signed a series of treaties with both Christian and Muslim states, guaranteeing safe, tax-advantaged trade and ensuring its merchants had access to markets across the whole Mediterranean. The Republic's strategy was to create an environment that was stable and attractive to foreign traders, while carefully protecting its own merchants' interests. The people of Dubrovnik understood that trade was not merely a matter of profit, but also of ethics, reputation, predictability, and long-term planning. One of Dubrovnik's most remarkable thinkers from the 15th century, Benedict Kotruljević or Benedetto Cotrugli, in his book On Trade and the Perfect Merchant, wrote, "Even though trade is full of change and uncertainty, it still follows certain noble rules, both general and specific, which every merchant must understand." This suggests that the merchant of that era was seen as a proponent of trust and stability, someone whose success depended on following principles that benefited not just themselves, but the society as a whole. So even back then, Dubrovnik understood that trade is not a zero-sum game, but a win-win dynamic that raises prosperity of all sides through cooperation, not through confrontation. And while Dubrovnik's economic model was based on trade, its leaders wisely balanced openness with strategic autonomy, what we call today strategic autonomy. They understood the value of smart tariffs and customs policy. We walked past by the customs house, which was the most important commercial building at that time. Then they set low enough tariffs to stay competitive and keep trade flowing, but calibrated to protect the city's autonomy and to fund public needs, among others the water supply that was coming from those times, from the hill which we visited yesterday. They also invested strategically in shipbuilding, offering targeted subsidies to support a sector vital to their maritime strength. This wasn't industrial policy for its own sake, but in service of a broader national strategy, ensuring competitiveness and autonomy in providing top-notch transport services for merchants and the trade partners. Not every intervention was a success. For example, Dubrovnik tried to support local textile production, but it never matched the scale or quality of foreign competitors, so in the end had to be shut down. The lesson was clear even then. Successful industrial policy needs to align with long-term comparative advantage. Equally instructive is Dubrovnik's approach to resilience, the topic of our conference. The city was much aware of the risks of war, siege, and famine. So in the 16th century, it invested in underground grain silos, which were carved into solid rock. These silos, called rupe, or holes, could store enough supplies to feed the population for a full year. They still exist today, so if you go in whoever stays here on Saturday can go to Dubrovnik Ethnographic Museum, where you can see the deep silos through the openings in the floor. These reserves weren't just practical, they were also strategic. They reduced dependency on external supplies and gave Dubrovnik the confidence and autonomy to negotiate from a position of strength, even in a crisis times. The lessons from Dubrovnik about balancing openness with protection, ambition with caution, and integration with strategic autonomy remain, I think, deeply relevant today. Like Dubrovnik, our region must navigate between powerful blocks and shifting alliances. It must adapt its growth model to more uncertain, fragmented world. What does this mean in practice? It means recognizing that the reshaping of global value chains and the reindustrialization in Europe will not happen evenly. The CEE region must actively define its role within the EU and beyond to ensure that it is not sidelined in the process of changes. It means accelerating digital transformation, advancing institutional reforms, and investing in the skills and capabilities needed to compete in high-value sectors. It also means strengthening the region's ability to withstand shocks, from diversifying energy sources and modernizing infrastructure to building strategic reserves and ensuring robust public institutions. And while not all CEE countries are EU members, all have a stake in the future of Europe's economic architecture. A more complete and functional single market would bring benefit to the entire region, not only by deepening access for member states, but by creating more predictable rule-based conditions for those outside of the EU as well. In short, the region's future will depend not only on national choices, but on regional cooperation and strategic alignment. The story of Dubrovnik reminds us that small actors can shape their destinies in big ways if they are ambitious, adaptable, and open to cooperation. To follow all this example, I'll close with the Latin proverb, historia est magistra vitae. Indeed, in many ways, Dubrovnik's success story mirrors the choices we face today. Dubrovnik showed centuries ago, and as our region has shown in recent decades, that resilience is not the absence of risk, but the ability to navigate the risks in a wise way. This conference is our opportunity to channel that spirit, to connect past lessons with future goals, and to ensure that cooperation and resilience, which have served us so well in the past, go hand in hand even in a new, more fractured world. So with that, I will close and leave the floor to my co-host, Kristalina. Please, Kristalina.
Thank you very much, Governor Vujicic, dear Boris. On behalf of all of us, thank you for a wonderful evening. It was such a fantastic mixture of history and culture. And thank you for working hard to secure good weather. Before I get into my speech, I want to recognize the work of the two teams, the IMF and the Croatian team, for organizing this conference. And I suggest we give these guys a round of applause. Thank you. It is fantastic to be with you again. I am particularly pleased that this time the Commission wisely allowed Valdis Dombrovskis to be here. Last time he was sent as an ambassador to an inauguration, if I remember correctly. I can say that listening to you last evening gave me a very high degree of confidence that this time it will be different. This time Europe will stand up for itself, for its citizens, and for the betterment of the whole world. We are together at a time of higher uncertainty. The fog over our heads is actually thicker. And that makes it even more important to compare notes and see through this uncertainty and make the best out of the opportunities challenge always presents. I want to start, before I get into the challenges, I want to reflect on the successes this region has achieved. We have had 3 remarkable decades of reforms, promoting economic openness and integration, first with the EU, and then for some within the EU as member states, for others within the EU family as candidate countries. And we should not underestimate how significant that step towards enlarging the European family, these steps, one after another, have been. As Boris reminded us, this has led to significant convergence of countries with their better off peers. Since the mid-90s, incomes have more than doubled, and the gap relative to the advanced Europe has shrunk sharply. Manufacturing became a catalyst for productivity growth as integration into European and global value chains helped the CEE economies reach beyond their domestic markets. And at the same time, openness to foreign direct investment accelerated capital accumulation and technology transfer. And of course, EU accession played and continues to play a huge role. Powered by domestic structural reforms put in place on the path to EU accession, countries that have joined the EU accelerated their income convergence with advanced Europe and outperformed comparable countries outside of the bloc. So, what is the conclusion so far? Well done. Second, well, we have also unfinished business. The journey is far, far from being completed. One thing that we have observed with a little bit of sadness is very often, if not always, when countries join the European Union, the drive for reform eases somewhat. I was just talking to our friend from Moldova, saying, look, why are an accession country step on the pedal? Because once you get in, there would be these natural tendencies to say, oh, thank God we are in, we can relax. But relax, we cannot. We have to recognize that after the global financial crisis, we have seen a drop in investment, and this has contributed to a productivity slump that has only worsened after COVID. Revitalizing reforms is absolutely paramount. We see how we are being affected by tightness of our labor markets, by high energy costs, by the fact that technology is moving very fast, and if we are not moving even faster, we risk to fall behind. So I would really urge us to be ambitious to pursue reforms, and to do it because on top of everything, we are now faced with huge new challenges. The sweeping disruptions to the world trade system are plain for everybody to see. The way we function is being tested. And while most of the countries in this room are less impacted directly by US tariffs, let us be very clear, the indirect impact is significant, as these disruptions pose a major threat to the region's main trading partners and to the overall economic model that Boris described so well. Small open economies need trade to improve the well-being of their people. Trade tensions and uncertainty complicate domestic and foreign investment plans, and this is particularly painful for a region that needs access to modern production processes, needs more jobs in high productivity sectors, and needs this open world to expand economic opportunities. So what is my main message? Standing still, taking shelter when the winds are blowing, hoping for the storm to pass is not a plan. It would be much wiser to assume that many of the shifts we are witnessing are here to stay, that more storms are gonna hit us. So what do we do? In a stormy weather, how can we actually turn the winds from a risk for our navigation to a tailwind from, you call it the Adriatic Bora, make the Adriatic Bora work for us, for our sail, not against it. I want to point to three critical priorities. First, steering a steady course in terms of macroeconomic policy, monetary and fiscal stability as our most reliable mean to deal with uncertainty. Second, getting our ship in better order so it can move faster. And that means pursue structural reforms for growth. Third, integrate more deeply into and within the single market of the EU. Strength through regional cooperation. Let me briefly discuss each one of these points. Priority one, actions to mitigate uncertainty. It is always important to have sound monetary policy, sound fiscal policy, even more important when uncertainty is higher. Macroeconomic and financial stability is the anchor on which you can build your plans. I see some emerging risks there. On the monetary policy side, the pressure on central bank independence has become harder. We all have a role to play to protect it. I know that in the roundtable we had yesterday, this was a topic that came time and again. We also recognize that on the fiscal front, how many of you are finance ministers and those working in finance authorities? Raise your hand. Let me see. Okay. Well, this audience is, how many are central bankers? Very good. Central bankers this time have an upper hand in this audience. For the finance authorities, I mean, I'm very keen to see central bankers staying united and making a strong case for central bank independence. For the fiscal authorities, it is going to be a very tough time ahead of you. Why? Because over the last couple of years, what has happened is shock after shock after shock forced more fiscal largeness. They forced providing more support to households and to businesses. The result, higher deficits, higher debt, but even more problematic, businesses and households getting accustomed to that largeness. And now we need to go for fiscal consolidation. We have to say enough of this sugar rush. We have to do it differently. While at the same time there are more pressures for defense, more pressures from climate, more pressures for demography. So I think that this is where the fund also can be very helpful, so we can have fiscal policy that is prudent in terms of raising revenues, closing tax loopholes, prudent in terms of improving the quality of spending. Second priority, boost growth potential. We have done a very interesting study. I recommend to everybody here, take a look. It shows that this potential is quite significant. Domestic reforms across the CC, let me say it simply, the CC region could lift GDP levels by 7% over the medium term. And for the Western Balkans, even more, by 9%. Just imagine what you can do if you have that much more in terms of GDP, and that you can only do if you are relentless pursuing these reforms around the labor markets, around the investment climate, around the governance performance. And the third priority, last on my list, but definitely not least, work together. Integration is the only way for our small economies to be stronger in a world of more frequent and devastating shocks. It has been a source of success for us, and it is still with huge potential. I look at Valdis. We need the European Union to become relentlessly ambitious to complete the single market. At the IMF, we have done a study that shows that internal barriers among the 27 member states of the EU are the equivalent of 44% tariffs for goods and 110% tariffs for services. Obviously, this is in our hands to solve. And I know that Valdis gets up in the morning, goes to bed thinking about it. Boris, and working on it much harder than managing the exit of the UK from the European Union. As a European, I see 2025 as a decisive year for the European Union and for the world. Europe has a tremendous opportunity and responsibility to lead. Europe is fantastic as a place that operates on the basis of rules, where there is respect for each and every one of countries, big and small, where there is a social capital built on the basis of our cooperation. And I do hope we would see Europe raising to the challenge that is presented to us, the challenge to lead. We have looked into concrete steps to do so: a more integrated electricity market, more capital for startups, better labor mobility across borders, simpler regulation, and yes, capital markets union. That together can bring tremendous benefit in terms of competitiveness for Europe and can raise EU GDP by about 3% over the next 10 years. I was a Commissioner for Budget in my days in the European Union. I also would put a word to Europe to think about the value of the collective, and I would argue that the EU budget can lend more of a hand to Europe's transformation. I know this is not an easy conversation, but at this time it is a paramount decision to be made to have that capacity to lift up Europe's potential. So let me conclude in the following way. Throughout history, there are moments that present incredible challenge, but also moments of incredible opportunity, an opportunity not to be missed. This is one of these moments. And I so strongly believe that this region, and more broadly Europe, is gonna stand on its feet, meet what is expected from us at this moment in our history. I'm not gonna finish with Latin, Boris. Somebody has to break this tradition. But I remember fondly how when I was here last time, it was your birthday and I sang for you. And I'm going to finish by singing for everybody my favorite song of all times, very appropriate for the day. And it is, we will rock you. Thank you.
Managing Director. Please. Thank you. After the Managing Director has cited Queen and we will rock you, we could conclude this conference, I think. I think there's no better way and more powerful way than to call it a success. But suffice to say, we have a few more points to discuss. Thank you so much, Managing Director, for your input. And we will take a deep dive on many of the points and lessons that you have just shared with us. You see 3 more tables, rather 3 more chairs want to be filled here. First up, please join me in welcoming the Commissioner, Valdis Dombrovskis, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Good morning, Commissioner. Also with us is the Governor of the Estonian Central Bank. Please welcome Madis Müller, ladies and gentlemen. And last but certainly not least, delighted to join us here up on stage is the Minister of Finance of Slovenia, Klemen Boštjančić, ladies and gentlemen. What a spectacular panel we have here today, and very much looking forward to hearing from all of you. Managing Director, you've already pointed out that the policymakers in this region have acted decisively in response to the many shocks that we have faced in recent years, namely the pandemic, of course, and Russia's war in Ukraine. And by and large, you said, yes, the grade I would give and the evaluation I would give these countries is a job well done. But you've also pointed out very clearly a lot of challenges still remain. Let's go through them one by one. Of course, these countries, despite their good performance, are still suffering and dealing with lingering inflation and wage pressures. I was wondering if you could share with us some lessons that can be drawn from the recent inflation episode for monetary policy here in this region.
Thank you very much, and really great to see you again. My remarks on inflation are going to be framed by a review of disinflation episodes we have done. We looked at some 100 of those episodes, and what did we learn from it? Number one, monetary policy matters. When monetary policy is well-informed and decisive, the disinflation takes place without too much pain for businesses and households. When monetary policy is slow to act or is inconsistent, that leads to a more painful process of disinflation. And this is why in my opening remarks, I made the point that monetary policy is going to be an essential factor for the region to steer through time of higher uncertainty, and that central bank independence is a source of strength for monetary policy. We have to protect it. When we look at the inflationary environment today, globally, what we observe is that the disinflation process continues, but it has slowed down a bit as a result of the tariffs. And that we observe in this region as well. With very, very few exceptions, most countries are still above their target on inflation, they have to persist in bringing inflation down. The second thing we observe, and we see it in this region as well, is that the impact of tariffs is different, and the environment to fight inflation, or the situation central banks find themselves, is quite different from a country to a country. When we came out of COVID, it was easy because COVID hit everybody the same way, and it led to the same policy response: monetary policy accommodation, fiscal policy accommodation. Now we are in a very different place. In fact, tariffs can create a supply shock. That is the case, for example, for countries that are on the side of kind of putting tariffs on others, like the United States. What it means is that the supply of goods is reduced, and that puts pressure on prices up. Or it can be a demand shock, and that is pretty much the situation for the European Union, because the countries are now being put in a more difficult position should these tariffs persist, and the demand for European goods goes down. So my point here is that universally, when we are at a time of higher uncertainty, that's not good. Investors don't invest, consumers don't consume. In different countries, the situation is different, so policy has to be adjusted. But what is universal for all countries is the strength of monetary policy depends on the competence, professionalism, and independence of central banks. And since we now know central banks are the majority in the audience, I want to say to you central bankers, all the power to you.
Well, I think that's a message that is very well received here in this part, and we will hear from another central banker, of course, Maris Müller, in just a moment. But I want to bring in the Commissioner here for just one moment. Commissioner, we heard the Managing Director saying, despite the many shocks and challenges, this region, the CC region, have weathered the storm fairly well, a job well done. Would you concur?
Good morning, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here in Dubrovnik for this conference. All in all, if we look at the development in a region, indeed, one can say that this storm is weathered quite well, but it's also worth noting that the storm is not over yet. So it's too early to get relaxed. We are still facing the hard security threats from Russia. Russia continues for a fourth year its full-scale war in Ukraine. It openly threatens to invade other countries. So we need urgently to strengthen also our defense capabilities, defense industry, and that's obviously is even more important in Central Eastern Europe, and obviously especially for countries bordering with Russia. And at the same time, we need to continue to address our economic vulnerabilities, strengthen the resilience of our economy, and there we have a lot of work to do in the EU as a whole, and that fully applies also to this region. That's why one of the first initiatives of the new European Commission was Competitiveness Compass, where we outlined all the factors which are affecting EU's competitiveness and how we are going about to addressing them, including addressing the innovation gap, ensuring the right skills for workforce, addressing high energy prices, dealing with administrative burden, cutting red tape, and I would say all of those challenges equally applies also to this Central Eastern and Southeast Eastern region of Europe.
Yes, indeed. And defense spending, you've already mentioned, just one of many challenges. Trade policies, of course, On top of that, Minister Wojciech, you've listened to the Managing Director speak about this region and impart some valuable lessons. As a minister who's representing this region, I was wondering what your immediate response and reply would be.
I agree that Central Europe, or this region, responded quite swiftly, but I think it's time that European countries or EU should compare ourselves with the rest of the world. I have a feeling that we were last 20 years living in a bubble. It's like the whole world is Europe. It's not. So going back to the main topic, just in the case of our countries, it's the same everywhere. In the last 3 years, there was the energy crisis. We had the highest inflation in the history of Europe. In our country, we had 2 years ago the largest natural disaster, which was the floodings, and then we had to, we still do, fight with the consequences. Now it's the tariffs, and let's say the defense challenges. 5 big crises in 3 years. I think first thing that we all should do is that we have to accept that the crises are fact. They're not the exception. So there will be new, we just don't know which. I'm saying this because, of course, I sit a lot with my colleagues, ministers, who cover different portfolios, and they still believe that it's just a normal world. You know, the crisis, it's just a temporary thing, but it's not. So first thing is we have to accept that this is a fact. We live in the time of crisis. And then we have a new fiscal framework which was accepted in the EU just a year ago. It's a tremendous success, by the way. Half a year before it was accepted, I couldn't believe that this will happen. And by the way, I think that the guy most responsible for this sits with us. It's Valdis. Yes. And think we should all praise him for what he managed to do just in the last few months before the end of the last commission. So I think it's putting these things together. We have to take into account all this is that I think this fiscal framework has to be adapted. It's a good base, it's a good ground, but we have to be able to respond to the shocks. So basically, I think we have to embed flexible, counter-cyclical measures into existing framework.
Yeah, thank you so much for your initial remarks, Minister. And the point you're making, I think, is a stark one, but a very prudent and realistic one, namely that the state of crisis is the new norm. Yep. It's no longer an exception. It's not a storm that will just blow away, but we are here to face not just one, but multiple challenges and crises at the same time, Governor. This is, of course, that you do, Governor Müller, on a daily basis, and you've just heard the Managing Director say central bankers have to take the power and have to take the initiative. We are talking here, of course, at the end of the day about how to bolster growth and resilience in this very challenging world through macroeconomic policies for this region. I was wondering if you could comment.
Yes, thank you. And let me first thank the organizers of the event for having me here and inviting to this panel. I'm sorry, I also have to make a small disclaimer because my role at the ECB Governing Council, we have this principle that the week before the monetary policy meeting, we're not supposed to discuss the euro area economy and monetary policy. So I don't want to break the rule, but so anything I say shouldn't be considered as relevant for the next week's decision. But I think we can still discuss sort of principles.
This is not off the record, is it? No, it's not off the record. So
yes. So, but when you ask about the the challenges, the lessons learned also, and how to go forward from here from a central banker's perspective, then I also think we have learned a couple of lessons over the last couple of years. The minister just said that we're now living in times of crises that keep repeating. From the monetary policy perspective, I think we also learned that we just keep having those supply-side shocks, mostly related to geopolitics, also with, say, even climate. I think what we're experiencing now is that we're more frequent extreme weather events that are having an impact on the economy, and all of it is also having an impact on inflation. That's what we care about as central bankers, on the economy at large, of course. And when we conduct our monetary policy, the difficult part is now to understand how much of that impact that we're seeing on inflation in particular, how much is it temporary, that we can sort of look through in a way, and how much of it is having a longer-term impact, because this is what we as central banks can really sort of deal with and have an impact on. And I think we have perhaps had a few misses. For example, in 21, when the inflation started going up in the euro area, there was perhaps for too long an understanding that it's only temporary and we don't have to react that quickly. But then, of course, there was a realization that we still need to do it, and also the ECB reacted in a I think, a forceful enough manner. And maybe just to mention a couple of other things, I think one lesson also is that that monetary stimulus, it's also not a free lunch, and we cannot sort of keep that on for too much of an extended period. It will lead to misallocation of capital, some financial stability risks also, and I think there's a problem with speaking of fiscal policy, of giving sort of too much incentives for the governments to sort of keep running a loose fiscal policy and providing sort of easy way to finance additional expenditure. And perhaps the very last thing, when we always talk about price increases and the inflation as being the problem, I think we realize now that for regular people it's not really the year-to-year change in prices that they're concerned about, but the price level. And this has now become so much higher, and even if the annual inflation as we measure it is coming down, which of course is a great success, then the level of prices being so much higher than it just was a couple of years ago, I think that still is a problem. And we need to realize that sort of the inflation in general is perhaps a bigger concern for the economy and the population than the inflation running just a bit below our target as we had the situation some years ago.
Yes, most certainly. And if we're looking at the very complex and challenging task that all of you here have to master and juggle at the same time, namely deal with lingering inflation and wage pressures while at the same time addressing pressing spending needs, that is not an easy task, Managing Director. We just heard that the state of crisis is the new norm. When you travel the world and speak to central bankers and ministers and governors, is that fully understood?
First, I entirely agree that we are in a fast-changing world of more frequent and severe shocks. And wishing this away is not an option. At the fund, we have done some analysis on the resilience of the world economy in this new world. Good news is that we actually have proven to be remarkably resilient. If you think of the events that have occurred since the pandemic and the magnitude of these events, the fact that we have, yes, somewhat underwhelming global growth, but still, even in post-tariffs, 2.8%, we are not predicting a recession. This is quite remarkable. We have to ask ourselves, what is the source of this resilience? Because if you don't understand it, we cannot capitalize on it. And what we see are three very important elements. One, after the global financial crisis, there has been concerted effort to build the foundation for financial stability, a better regulated banking sector led to the banking sector sustaining these shocks quite well. Second, economic cooperation. We have built fora where policymakers, especially finance ministers and central bank governors, can compare notes, and at the time of uncertainty, the value of this is so high. And then, of course, we have institutions globally like the IMF, within Europe, the European Commission, that provide the analytical underpinning for that comparing notes that takes place. And third, we have seen the power of innovation, especially the role of the private sector in adapting quickly to changing circumstances, how much that helps. Now, we have to be careful because, yes, the banking sector has been quite resilient, but now around 50% of money goes to the non-banking financial institutions. They're much less regulated. How do we deal with this? It's a topic that we are trying to wrestle with. Second, in a more fragmented world, there is a risk that this global cooperation that has helped us to be more effective, more agile, more adaptable, may be dented. And I can tell you, as the head of the IMF, I take it as a huge responsibility for us at the fund to keep our membership together, 191 countries, and concentrate on our mandate, which is macroeconomic and financial stability, growth and employment, keep politics where it belongs. Foreign affairs discussions, UN, not an easy task, but obviously a task I count on you to support us to do. And the third thing that I see as highly concerning is that the speed with which other trends take place at a time when a shock concentrates our attention on one thing may leave us somewhat discoordinated. Let me explain. Today, we are all focused on tariffs. Well, while we focus on tariffs, climate cooperation is weakening, but climate change is accelerating. While we focus on tariffs, digital money, crypto, is picking up speed, and we are not quite on top of this development. While we are concentrating on tariffs, we see a world of more frequent and severe conflicts. We have Ukraine here, a war that should have never started, and we don't yet quite know when it is going to end. So my point is that we have to accept a reality of the unthinkable happening time and again. And as policymakers, we have to learn how to think of the unthinkable and how to be ready to adjust when the unthinkable happens. I can say I know my role, our role, the fund's role in that. Our role is to relentlessly pursue analytical work that shows us trends, trajectories, and help us see in a comprehensive way the world within which we operate. And since I'm on this topic, cannot miss on a chance to do a bit of marketing. We just published this, Finance and Development. This time it is mostly basically dedicated to Europe. And we look at these multiple factors of transformation that are taking place. And I think that the more we try to be a source of defining what is happening in the world and what trends are emerging, the more we can then take the right decisions to make us more adaptable to this fast-changing, more shock-prone world.
Yeah, for certain. And this plug for this magazine is very well taken. I think everybody will be rushing to get this, their hands on this very copy. But the challenges that you've laid out, again, Managing Director, obviously affects everyone here in this room, and specifically also the three gentlemen we are here on stage with. Commissioner, to address all these pressing needs that needs to be faced, that the Managing Director has laid out so eloquently, it's very clear that the EU has to enhance competitiveness, innovation, and productivity on all levels. How can the EU effectively intervene in order to bolster these elements and these factors? How to enhance competitiveness, innovation, and productivity in the EU?
Yeah, well, thank you for this question. I already mentioned our competitiveness compass, so that's basically our guide how to do it. Because there are short-term challenges which we are facing stemming from Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine, stemming from the following energy price shock which we just recently had, and so on, but also structural challenges which we are facing, including population aging, including relatively slow productivity growth already for decades, so we need to deal with both of them at the same time. So on innovation, so how to close the innovation gap, one point is that we just need to invest more in research and innovation, because relative to the size of economy, we are investing less than other major economies, and so we do have this innovation gap which we need to close, and countries in Central Eastern Europe tend to be among countries which are investing also substantially below the EU average. So there is especially something to be catched up in Central Eastern Europe. Energy prices, as we're mentioning again, energy prices are higher in the EU than in other major economies, so we recently came with an action plan for affordable energy, how we can actually bring energy prices lower and to compete on more equal footing also on energy-intensive industries. Skills, I say, doesn't require much explanation. Labor market is rapidly changing. Requirements of the green and digital economy are different than they were years or decades ago. So we need to have the workforce with all the right skills. That's where the European skills agenda comes from. Then on addressing administrative burdens, red tape, 60% of European companies are saying that administrative burden is an obstacle for investment. 55% of SMEs are saying that administrative burden is actually kind of their biggest obstacle for overall doing business. So there is obviously a need to substantially simplify and streamline our regulations, and the work is well underway. We had come already in February with first two omnibus proposals on sustainability reporting, sustainability due diligence, taxonomy, CBAM, also on public investment side. We have followed up in between with simplification of common agricultural policy, with setting up a new type of companies, or defining new type of companies, small mid-caps, with a relevant alleviation for small mid-caps, with a single market package, because also Kristalina was mentioning in her speech the importance of actually using the full potential of the single market, which is our largest economic asset, and there is lots of potential there. But also it's important that we stay open to the world, and that we develop partnerships around the world, deepen and strengthen existing ones, and also find new partners via trade agreements or other kind of agreements for economic cooperation. So as you see, there is lots of work to do. There is not one single bullet how to strengthen our competitiveness and resilience. It's quite a complex endeavor, but we need to move forward.
Yeah, we need to move forward. Still lots of work to be done, but still, Minister Boccianci, listening to the governor, to the Commission, it's very clear that the EU's role in supporting growth and resilience is a very critical one.
Apart from the crisis, we all have many other challenges. I'll just name two. One is green transition. Second one is the challenges connected with the aging population. But above all, I truly believe that competitiveness should be #1 priority of all of us. No matter what the crisis we have to work on, but the competitiveness is something we talk a lot at the European level. The ECOFIN of the last 2 years, this has been the main topic. But then it lacks action. I will just explain 2 examples. When the US introduced the tariffs, the Chinese, in less than 30 days, signed over 100 agreements with mostly other Asian countries. There was some PR behind it, I know. But anyway, so what Europe did. Or I'll go back to something which I remember very often. In the last half a year was 2 times I paid a visit to Saudi Arabia. There was one particular project, a bilateral, important, big projects among the countries, which I introduced to their Minister of Finance. I had 2 meetings arranged, one with the Minister of Finance, the second one with the Minister of Economy. After the meeting with the Minister of Finance, which was Thursday morning, he was thrilled, and he said, but it's not enough that you meet with me. You have to meet also with the Minister of Natural Resources and Minister of Investments. He says, yes, but I'm leaving tonight, and I know it's Thursday, so it's like, the day before your weekend. He says, that's not a problem. So I had all 4 meetings. The last one was on Thursday at 8 or 9 with all the teams behind. Can you imagine this in Europe? To be able to move so fast? I don't think so. So what I think it's the #1 things we should do in our countries, but also in the EU level, we have to rethink how to govern reforms at the EU level. It should be much more of a top-down approach. So it's not enough just to announce the initiatives. We need a clear governance shift that will ensure the coordination across programs, across portfolios, and which will focus on results.
Yeah, Europe needs to be, it's very clear listening to you, Europe needs to be more agile, more flexible to enhance competitiveness. I think the example of Saudi Arabia is a very stark one in contrast.
I really believe the biggest challenge today to address the competitiveness is the governance of European countries and of the EU. I'll be more provocative. I think that it's, especially in the circumstances in the world we live today, that the decision-making process is way too much democracy. Sorry.
It's too much democracy, Managing Director.
Well, I still think that living in Europe is great. I remember the days when the World Bank, I was at that time with the World Bank, wrote a beautiful report about Europe in which it classified Europe as lifestyle superpower. And I don't think we should lose this. But the point I want to make is that I agree with you that if we are to go in the traditional consensus-building manner, in Europe to solve the problems we face and increase competitiveness of Europe, that may not be a viable path. We at the fund are very much in favor of a 28 regime for firms. We think Europe has to step forward in a way in which space is created for a competitive Europe to quickly materialize. I'm going to say something based not on my role as IMF head, but on my experience of 7 years in the Commission. And it is, there is beauty in unanimity, but there is also paralysis coming with unanimity. And Europe has to think seriously whether in a fast-changing world, unanimity is affordable. And I know I'm fully aware of the difficulties to make some of these changes. But as I said in my opening, this is a very, very special moment. It is a very challenging time, and it is an opportune moment. And I believe what I see in Europe is growing recognition that Europe has to break some of the comfortable elements of what it is to be European. I think that Europe has to learn to think about problems more as opportunities. In this little thing, there is one particular article which is about aging. Now, obviously, full disclosure, being myself a mature individual, there is a reason to like it a lot, but the message of this article is think of your demography as a strength. You have experienced people who live long lives because the health system of Europe is so good. Make sure they're productive. Make sure that they have opportunities to work longer. So that kind of mindset in Europe, to think of challenges as opportunities, enjoy them, embrace them, break some legs, make a nice omelet.
Enjoy and embrace the opportunities. Governor Miller, jump right in. I know you wanted to jump in here, and then of course, Commissioner, I know you want to reply to what Minister Boščagić just laid out. But Governor Miller, please go ahead.
Maybe just a couple of words on the competitiveness of Europe still. So much was said already, what the European Commission is already doing, what should be done. Perhaps I would just like to emphasize now from the central banker's perspective, still the need to have common capital markets. And the Capital Markets Union working, now we have the Savings and Investment Union project that I think has a lot of potential, but still definitely there's a need to deliver. And it not only has to do with the banking sector that could perhaps consolidate more in Europe, but the problem really is for, I think, equity financing, more of a risk capital that is not available for companies, innovative companies that are looking for faster growth. And I agree also with the managing director that it is a moment where we could really sort of seize the opportunity as Europe. We have seen savings from Europe over an extended period, traditionally moving towards the US, seeing there better opportunities for growth, better returns. But I think, there is a chance perhaps now to shift this situation a little bit, given the complications with the economic policy we see over the Atlantic. I think we have a sort of relatively more stability here that could also be used as an opportunity, but we need to do so much still ourselves here as well.
Yeah, I think the points you're raising are very well appreciated. I want to take in some questions here, but want to give the Commissioner, of course, a chance to respond to what the Slovenian finance minister said.
Yeah,
we didn't recognize Valdis. We heard that Valdis played a hugely important role to move towards more competitive Europe. So before you speak about this, this audience, we are all Europeans benefiting from your work. We want to give you a round of applause. Bravo to you.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. Yeah, and I'll have to contradict with what Clement was saying. I think in this era of unpredictability and fragmentation, actually having stability, having predictability, having respect for fundamental rules and values, including rule of law, democratic principles, it actually counts for something. And we should be using it also as our strengths and Europe as a safe haven in a current turbulent world. And actually we're already seeing that there is elevated investor interest in Europe, in euro-denominated assets. So we should be seizing this interest, and obviously I think we all can agree that we should be moving faster and streamline our procedures, and we should have simplified legislation and all this, and this is something we definitely need to do, but we also need to preserve our basic principles and values, because actually it is part of our strengths.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, all of you here on stage want the one thing, namely for Europe to grow and become more resilient at the same time. But I think the points here that have been made are very well noted and appreciated. Let's take some questions from the audience. If there are some, I think we still have some time left. Can be a comment, can be a remark, can be a question. It's up to you. I'm seeing the audience looking at us in a very fascinated way. So it seems that we have answered most, if not all, of the questions that are lingering. But I think there's one hand up. Microphone is coming to you. Please introduce yourself quickly.
Thank you. Karel Arnaud from CEPS, a think tank in Brussels. Thank you for a fascinating panel. I mean, many different things were touched upon, but one thing probably the managing director refer to it, but shouldn't we have a clearer perspective to this region for EU membership? If we speak about the single market, if we speak about stability, than what it is today. I mean, we are very close to Montenegro, we're very close to Bosnia and Herzegovina, we're very close to Albania. Montenegro is on the waiting list since 2008. Can we afford this, let's say, to have a region which is, of course, economically not so important, but politically, strategically, geographically important, to keep them waiting? And I see 4 members in this panel, which are all representing member states of the EU. So what are your views? What could we do if you speak, Managing Director, about the opportunities? This could be an opportunity for a single market and for strengthening the single market. And of course, it would give signs to others as well, which are on the waiting list.
Thank you.
Yep. Well, the
EU enlargement, big issue.
I believe that the best invention of the 20th century, by far, was the convergent engine of European integration. The best by far. It has delivered tremendous improvements in living standards and created enormous opportunities. This convergence engine, let's face it, it has been stalling somewhat. In other words, it is harder to expand Europe when Europe inside has so much unfinished business. I do believe that the trajectory to enlarge Europe is the right one, get countries to move decisively, to prove by strengthening governance and resolving problems that keep them apart from Europe before they enter Europe. So that magnet is there and countries are making the necessary efforts. Are they quite there? When you look at the convergence, the accession assessment, almost, but what was the saying? No cigar. not quite, not quite. So my first message is to the candidate countries: cross all T's, dot all I's. And we at the fund are supporting that process very strongly. But then to Europe, once this is done, get countries in. There is, I would express personal opinion again, the idea that it should be batches of countries, everybody has to get there before they enter, may not be the right idea. Maybe it is okay to have countries that are moving faster in without the whole set of problems for everybody being resolved. Of course, this is a technical process, and it is also a political process, and the political side plays a very, very important role. Is it good for the world to see that Europe continues to expand? Yes, it sends a signal. We are strong, we are attractive, we are a magnet. And that how do you do it? I would say very frankly something based on our own experience of my own home country, Bulgaria, that the biggest driver for reforms is, while countries are in the accession process, once they get in, they say, oh, we are in, we can relax. So make the best out of it, and this is why I would argue, do not compromise. You have to meet you have to cross the T's, you have to dot the I's. But once it is done, open the door, get countries in.
Yeah, and I think the issue of EU enlargement has taken on a much more urgent tone ever since Russia's war against Ukraine. Now it's no longer just a matter of economic considerations, but really of geopolitical ones. Thank you. I think the point you're raising, Managing Director, is very valid. We have one final question. We're running out of time. Please go ahead.
Hi, very nice to be here. Thank you very much. Sasha Vakulina from Euronews. I want to follow up on what you said regarding Russia's full-scale invasion on Ukraine, and specifically when we go into defense industries and defense sectors. Of course, this is something that can contribute and is already contributing a lot to the economies, to the resilience and the security on national levels, on the EU level. But should we try to make the defense industry and tech defense more mainstream when it comes to economic growth and resilience? So if you could comment on that, I would really appreciate. Thank you.
Whom is your question directed to?
To everybody, if I
Well,
may.
we don't have time for that, but let's see. Perhaps the Commissioner is best suited to take that one.
Yeah, well, thank you for this question. Indeed, we are seeing also this investment in strengthening our defense capabilities and defense industry as a factor that will positively contribute to economic growth and resilience in Europe. So we are now putting substantial amounts of funding available for this, both through the additional fiscal flexibility from member states and through our new 150 billion euros SAFE program. So clearly that will provide a certain stimulus. Of course, it will depend how this money is going to be spent, how much it is actually going to be spent in European research and innovation in area of defense, how much it's going to be spent on European defense industry, how much it's going to be spent on imported equipment. Obviously, it all has implications for what economic impact this additional funding is going to have. But another element is also assessment of geopolitical risks. And again, that's primarily the issues for countries bordering with Russia, where already now you see that investors are factoring geopolitical risks for being in a neighborhood of aggressor state. So investment in hard security in this case is also needed to reassure that we are addressing those geopolitical risks, and it's still safe to invest in, including in Central Eastern European region, because now we see that the economic impact of Russia's war of aggression is so to say, asymmetric, and Central Eastern Europe has more negative impact than maybe Western Europe, so something which we also need to address.
Yeah, thank you so much, Commissioner, for addressing that question. We only have a few minutes left. I know the Managing Director is on a very tight schedule, so perhaps we'll end on a more uplifting, positive note. We've been talking for the past 60 minutes here about how to promote growth and resilience in a more fragmented world, specifically for Europe. 60 seconds each, starting with Governor Müller in reverse order, and we're going to end with you, Managing Director. What, despite all the challenges and difficulties that we have addressed here in the past hour, still makes you very optimistic that this region, that Europe, will come out, I would say, come out triumphant, will come out in a way more robust and more productive and more ready for the 21st century?
Well, I think we have known for a number of years really what needs to be done. But now, as the Managing Director also said, I think there's a sense that there really is an opportunity to make a change for Europe. And I think there's also a feeling among the leaders that we should seize the opportunity. So I'm just hopeful that it will actually happen.
Yeah. Minister Bočančić?
What makes me optimistic is that some of the countries in EU, but not only EU, also some of the countries we're trying to join EU, are making much better than they used to 10 years ago. Greece, for example, Portugal. Yes. You know, they were all thought of like, you know, whatever, burden to Europe. Now they're front runners. So I think we can all learn something from this.
Yeah, I think the example that you have provided certainly gives a reason for hope. Commissioner, you have your hands full within the next 5 years. I think that's for certain. Very challenging environment, also with a U.S. president who doesn't make your life easier, that's for certain. But what still gives you hope and what still makes you optimistic? We know what you're thinking when you go to bed. The Managing Director has already laid it out. But what positive thoughts are you waking up with?
First of all, I would say I am, so to say, moderately optimistic. I'm not overly optimistic because, unfortunately, it looks that we are heading towards a period of more fragmented, more conflictual world. I'm not seeing a quick and easy exit of this. So it's not just a period of turbulence. It will be over and then will emerge triumphant. I think it's going to be a longer period and with substantial geopolitical shifts which we'll have to deal with in a way forward. What makes me moderately optimistic is that indeed we have substantial challenges in EU to deal with, but in a sense one can see that our resolve to deal with those challenges is equally large. So we are ready and willing to tackle the challenges we face head on.
Yeah. Managing Director, you are known for being a straight shooter.
You know, what makes me optimistic is that developments in the world are pressing Europe to move from looking at its belly button to look at the world outside. We heard people talking about it. Europe has complexities, has the need to kind of concentrate on itself, but now Europe is looking outwards, and what Europe sees there is, well, there are some that are more productive. Why? No reason for Europe not to be more productive when you look at the difference in productivity between the US and Europe. In terms of attractiveness for investment, Europe can now make itself much more attractive, including because of being forced to rapidly expand its defense capabilities. Smart investment in R&D in dual technologies can bring tremendous opportunities for venture capital to flourish. And Europe is finally concentrating seriously on the internal self-inflicted injuries that it can remove. But what I see that I haven't seen before is a more confident Europe. So I'll tell you a story. Sorry, I'll take 30 more seconds.
Of course.
I went
You're
to
the one who has the
United
plane to
States.
catch.
I went to the United States in the early 90s. And what I observed was that me, as European, would always undersell myself. So I'm asked how you're doing, and I would say the biggest compliment I would give myself would be, well, not too bad. And then there are the Americans, and they just blink and it is great, it's fantastic. So I think we as Europeans, we have to present that image of confidence because we are great, we are fantastic.
Yeah, we are great, we are fantastic. I think there's no better way than to end this discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you would agree this has been a very insightful, very intricate, very informative session based and focusing on the growth and resilience in a more fragmented world. Thank you so much to our four speakers, of course, Minister Bocancic, Governor Müller, Commissioner Dombrovskis, and Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva. Thank you so much. Once again, this is your applause. Much appreciated. Thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, we will now go for a quick coffee break and group photo. Please be back here sharp at 11:10 for session 2. Thank you so much again. Enjoy the coffee break. It's great to have you.